And welcome to CBN NewsWatch for this Thursday, July 29, 2021. The Delta variant is spreading rapidly, causing increased hospitalizations, deaths, and even possible mandates. Our medical reporter Lori Johnson joins us with some insight. Plus, Cuban Americans are asking, where is President Biden, as protests grow against communist dictatorship in Havana.
Cuba was supposed to be this healthcare miracle, right? It's supposed to be this socialist paradise.
And Iran's leaders continue their push to destroy Israel, but some Iranians are not in agreement.
As we heard on the streets of Iran, people were shouting against Iranian government. Israel is not our enemy.
See how they're showing support to Israel. All this and more next.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And we begin this half hour with the latest on the Delta variant. Cases are soaring and hospitalizations and deaths are rising, leaving many in the healthcare sector on edge. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson brings us more.
Monday, the Department of Veterans Affairs became the latest federal agency to require vaccination specifically for its 115,000 healthcare workers. The American Medical Association and 56 other leading medical organizations now calling for mandatory vaccinations for workers at all healthcare settings, including nursing homes nationwide.
Now, that is the healthcare industry where they are very much on the front lines.
California soon requiring vaccination or negative weekly COVID tests for state and healthcare workers. New York City also mandating vaccination or tests for municipal workers, including teachers and healthcare workers, and urging private employers to require shots.
It's quite clear the Delta variant has changed the game. We need to move to stronger measures.
In the meantime, Florida's governor says ordinary people should not be forced or mocked into taking the vaccine.
They have different reasons for why they don't take it, and I think that the more they're hectored by government officials or some of these folks, that is not going to get them to yes. I can tell you that right now.
The Delta variant, which makes up 83% of COVID cases in America, is much more contagious than other strains, largely because people infected with it carry up to 1,000 times more virus. That means people who have no immunity are most vulnerable. In fact, health officials say 99% of U.S. hospitalizations and deaths are unvaccinated.
I'm worried that it's going to get much, much worse. Right now, we're generating about 50,000 Americans getting infected. That number could easily double or triple.
Many Americans responding to the Delta danger. Nearly 800,000 got their shot over the weekend, a big jump over previous ones. Right now, about half of the total U.S. population and nearly 70% of all adults have been vaccinated. Health experts say in addition to getting the vaccine, a person can also achieve natural immunity if they already had the virus. Ephraim.
Lori, how long does immunity from the vaccines last?
Well, new research shows that the antibodies in a person's system tend to wane. They tend to dissipate after about 7 months. They're still there, but in lower numbers. That's why, for example, in Israel, people who are at highest risk and who got their initial vaccine 7 months ago are now getting a third shot of the Pfizer vaccine. And Pfizer has asked the FDA to approve that third booster shot here in the U.S. as well.
What is the effectiveness of the various vaccines and how are they with the Delta variant?
Well, the Delta variant has changed everything. Up until a couple of weeks ago, we saw that all three of the vaccines were highly effective at preventing anyone from even getting COVID-19. But new research out of Los Angeles County shows that a fourth, Ephraim, 1 out of 4 people who get COVID are actually fully vaccinated. Now, the good news is fully vaccinated people are still not going to the hospital and not dying, but they are being affected at never before seen numbers. And remember, infected people, even those people who are vaccinated, are still highly contagious because of this highly contagious Delta variant.
How likely are some of the mutant variants to not be effective against COVID?
Well, we know that this first one is the Delta variant is evading the vaccines that we have right now. And so we're not sure how effective they are. It appears that Moderna is the most effective, followed by Pfizer and then J&J. Now, we do have some other variants on the horizon, the Gamma and also the Lambda variants. And you just have to think of variants are something that go hand in hand with viruses. As viruses spread, variants develop. So the best way to stop variants is to stop the spread of COVID-19. And health officials say vaccines are still the best way to do that. As far as how dangerous these variants on the horizon are, we still don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Lori, we're seeing a push now for more mask mandates. Explain the move and why that's happening.
Right. So people who are unvaccinated have always been have always been advised to wear masks inside. But now, as of this week, unvaccinated people are being advised to wear masks inside. And it's because of what we just talked about before, is vaccinated people are not as protected against getting COVID-19 as they were before the Delta variant came on the scene. So now vaccinated people, fully vaccinated people, do carry somewhat of a risk of being infected with COVID-19 and transmitting it. That's the reason for the masks, even for the vaccinated. But again, Ephraim, it's very important to point out that vaccinated people are not being hospitalized and not dying. 99% of all deaths and 97% of all hospitalizations are among the unvaccinated.
Great insight, Lori. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It's a bipartisan breakthrough on a traditional infrastructure package. 17 Senate Republicans, including Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, voted with every Democrat to advance a $1.1 trillion package. That breaks down to $100 billion for highways, $65 billion to expand broadband internet, and $73 billion for the nation's power grid. It is still unclear exactly how the bill will be paid for. The White House saying the funds will come from leftover COVID relief money and other measures. There's still a ways to go, though, before it comes up for a formal vote. More negotiations and a formal debate lie ahead. America is supposed to be a beacon for all people who want to be free, but the left's reaction to the Cuba protest shows they are a lot less supportive when it comes to communist dictators. Altair Hurd is on this story.
As the protests in Havana against Cuba's communist dictatorship continue, Cuban Americans are also protesting outside the White House this week and in cities across the country. And many are asking, to his credit, Joe Biden actually did express support for the Cuban protest early on. But critics say the administration could have done a lot more to encourage the protesters and hasn't. And the reaction from the so-called progressive wing of the Democrat Party and the mainstream media has been downright strange. The New York Times was ripped for labeling the protesters' calls for freedom anti-government slogans. Department of Homeland Security Chief Alejandro Mayorkas warned any potential Cuban refugees they would not be allowed to enter the U.S., even as record numbers of illegal migrants have poured over the U.S. southern border, causing some to wonder if it's because people fleeing socialism would be more likely to vote Republican. Then Democrats like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez blamed the hardships in Cuba not on socialism but on the United States economic embargo, even though Cuba can get anything it wants from the many other nations it trades with. In a statement supporting the protest, Cortez wrote, "We must also blame the U.S. contribution to Cuban suffering, our 60-year embargo." She also called the embargo absurdly cruel and said the cruelty is the point.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is nothing more than a communist sympathizer who wants to bring socialism to the United States of America, and I'm sure she sympathizes with the regime in Cuba.
Whether or not that's true, AOC is a proud socialist.
Yeah. But I want to point out that she's a socialist. She wants 10% tax rates. Those are both accurate, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Bernie Sanders, an avowed socialist who honeymooned in the Soviet Union, last year defended his positive comments about Fidel Castro from the 1980s.
We're very opposed to the authoritarian nature of Cuba. But, it's unfair to simply say everything is bad. You know, when Fidel Castro came into office, you know what he did? He had a massive literacy program. Is that a bad thing?
The grandson of Cuban refugees, Jason Poblet of the Global Liberty Alliance, says the U.S. is missing a golden opportunity to bring real change to the island because of the myths the left has believed about Cuba.
You know, you don't want to lose Cuba, right? Because Cuba was supposed to be this healthcare miracle, right? It's supposed to be this socialist paradise that they have been cramming into the heads of students and university students. So yes, we could do a lot. We're not doing it.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Turning now to some other stories making headlines in the CBN newsroom at this hour. Tsunami warnings are in effect after a magnitude 8.2 earthquake struck the Alaska Peninsula late Wednesday evening. The quake struck at the depth of 35 kilometers. It was 500 miles from Anchorage, which is Alaska's biggest city. A web designer from Colorado will appeal after a 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals denied her challenge of the state's anti-discrimination law. The court ruled the state can force her to design wedding websites for same-sex couples. She says it violates her Christian beliefs. You can get more on this story by visiting our website, cbnnews.com. Walmart announced this week it will pay for college tuition and books for a group of schools for its approximately 1.5 million full and part-time employees. Walmart says it is doing this to create a path for opportunity for their associates, giving them room to grow and pursue their passion and purpose. Coming up, a new poll says Americans feel negative about the future of our country. We're going to give you the reasons why. It's all coming up. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Americans feel more negative about the future. A new ABC News poll found 55% are pessimistic about the country's direction. And on this week's episode of The Global Lane, a financial issues and national radio and TV host puts the blame on rising inflation and the COVID-19 uncertainty.
We got some very interesting inflation data out on Tuesday that came out, indicating a poll that University of Michigan did, indicating that most people are very concerned about inflation and are looking at inflation rate as to what they think will be somewhere around 4.8%. That was the average. But inflation right now is sitting at a 13-year high. We're sitting at 5.4%. Gary, we haven't been there since August of 2008. I don't have to tell you what happened later that year in October. So this is 5.4% inflation rates, a 13-year high. That's got to be weighing on an awful lot of people. And, you know, the average person is feeling that because the majority of this inflation has been on food. And nobody's talking about that. They talk about the core inflation, which takes food out. But 5.4% inflation is extremely high for the average person that hasn't seen inflation in a very, very long time. And that is one of the reasons. The other thing that we're seeing is people are pricing out of houses now. So housing is, the mortgage companies are saying, hey, we're qualifying somebody for a mortgage. They get ready to go to settlement, and the house is increased in price by $20,000, and now they don't qualify anymore. Mortgage companies are concerned about that, so are buyers. And then we have COVID. You know, people, I call state-run media is talking about COVID, another round of the epidemic, and certainly that lends itself to some pessimism, too.
Well, that creates a lot of uncertainty, doesn't it, Dan?
Exactly.
Yeah. And, of course, there's the rising crime rate in major cities. A total of 2 million people expected to pour over the southern border as well by the end of this fiscal year. So how do all these developments play into consumer perceptions, and what's the impact on the U.S. economy?
Debt aside, national debt aside, which is impacting all of that, it creates an environment of hunkering down. People, when they get concerned about the uncertainty of the economy and the environment they're living in, the natural thing they do is they hunker down. And what I mean by that is they slow down their spending dramatically. And that has an incredibly negative impact on the economy and eventually trickles into business sentiment. And we could be looking at November, December business sentiment as being very concerning and weak. So uncertainty, never a good thing for the economy. Inflation, never a good thing for the economy. Crime, and as you say, the illegal immigration that is expected to hit close to 2 million by the end of the year, and it doesn't look like anybody's doing anything to stop it.
No wonder we're pessimistic right now. Any bright spots, Dan? I know travel is up for Americans. More Americans are vacationing this summer.
There's some bright spots like that. Traveling, vacation, people are getting out, but you know, I think that if we see even the slightest shutdown as a result of this Delta variant, people are fed up. They're really going to be, I think people are going to be angry and very, very much in a mode of this is all too uncertain. Whether it's contrived or not, they're still going to be thinking, what's next? And that would be the reason why 6 months into this administration that we're seeing these numbers that you mentioned at the very beginning of this, of people becoming more pessimistic. And it has to be as a result of either what the administration is doing or what the administration isn't doing. And that's a huge concern for the average American.
Okay, everyone looking for a little stability and certainty. Dan Celia, Financial Issues National Radio and TV host. Always a pleasure talking with you, Dan. Thanks so much for sharing your time today.
You're welcome, Gary. Great to be here with you.
And you can catch the Global Lane this evening at 8:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. We'll be right back.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together
to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
For decades, Iran's rulers have committed time and resources to the destruction of Israel. Over the years, though, cracks in support in the Islamic regime are growing. As Chris Mitchell now reports, that has helped to lead to an historic visit to Israel by a group of Iranian expatriates.
These demonstrators in southwestern Iran are protesting the government's decision to limit their water supply. Several people have been killed, and more protests have spread throughout the country, calling for regime change.
As we heard on the streets of Iran, people were shouting against Iranian government. Israel is not our enemy. America is not our enemy. You are referring to Iranian regime are our enemy. People inside Iran, they realize who's their enemy, and they are trying to do their best to get rid of the Iranian regime.
While these protests continue inside the country, these Iranians, some of them Muslims, are showing support on their first visit to Israel. This group came with the Institute for Voices of Liberty, which is dedicated to encouraging democracy in Iran. Ellie Kohanim's family fled the republic when she was 5 years old.
They want to mark history. They are here to tell the people of Israel that they support them and they reject the Iranian regime's anti-Semitism and genocidal desire to wipe Israel off the face of the earth.
In 1979, the revolution led by Ayatollah Khomeini turned Iran from a pro-Western power to a country dedicated to destroying Israel and spreading its Islamic beliefs worldwide. These Iranians call the past 42 years an aberration in Iran's long history.
Unfortunately, this regime is at war with Iranian history, culture, civilization, and most importantly, Iranian values of tolerance and acceptance. We're here to make it very clear to the people of Israel that the Iranian people stand with the people of Israel and that we condemn the regime in Iran, which is an occupying force.
For the past year, the world has heard about the Abraham Accords. One of the goals of this mission is to let people know about what they call the Cyrus Accords.
Abraham Accords, of course, as everybody here knows, is a peace agreement between Israel and its Arab neighbors. We feel that just as that peace was hard to believe that it would happen, and it did happen, Cyrus Accords, a deal between Israel and a future free democratic Iran, is possible as well.
These accords are named after the Persian king who allowed the Jews to rebuild the Second Temple in Jerusalem.
And so the Iranian people believe that for 2,500 years there were warm relations between the people of Israel and people of Iran.
My story is really the prime example of that. You know, the Iranian Jews, we were one of the most ancient Jewish communities in the world. We lived side by side our neighbors for over 2,500 years. I am Iranian culturally. You know, my heart is still with my brothers and sisters in the country. And so this regime that came in 1979, they are a complete aberration. They preach hatred, but the people are rejecting it.
Ahmed Batabi served 2 years in an Iranian jail as a political prisoner.
The main message is we are not your enemy. We love you. We can be not necessarily friend. We can be brother. We have a lot of cultural values that we can make a good Middle East with these values.
Although the mission traveled throughout the country, they felt it significant as Iranians to visit Jerusalem, the city a once great Persian ruler helped to rebuild.
I wish you could have seen the awe that various delegates saw when they walked in the city of David, when they heard the history that stems through from Cyrus the Great, through various millennia, and how much the two people have in common. And I think it just reinforced the reason why they came here. And we hope that this is not a one-off, that this is a beginning of a long-term process which inevitably ends up in peace and prosperity for both people right after they sign the Cyrus Accords, of course.
In the meantime, their hearts remain back home.
Lots of my countrymen inside Iran, which I talk to them, I read their messages. They are hoping, they are desperate, and they're waiting every minute, every second for the dismantlement of the Iranian Islamic Republic.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Western Wall, Jerusalem.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Wednesday at 3 on the CBN News Channel.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Before we go, here is today's Thursday Thankful. God, I am grateful for your goodness and your mercy. You are the good shepherd, and you lead me to the water where my thirst is quenched and I am flooded with grace. With that prayer, I encourage you to make this day a day filled with gratitude. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make it a thankful Thursday. We'll see you right back here for a fabulous Friday.